We're back on part two of our interview series on Rare and Real with Ella Balasa. Ella, again, is a brilliant healthcare educator and communicator around antimicrobial resistance and rare disease in general with her personal battle with cystic fibrosis. We're excited to have you again, Ella. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Nate, for having me.
Um, Ella, can you talk a little bit more about how you first got involved with patient advocacy? All of a sudden you're going through this journey, you have experimental phage therapy, you were benefiting from Trikafta as a modulator, still having low lung function, then all of a sudden you decide to start telling your story. And how did that translate into the career that you have now?
Yeah, so it's really these experiences that catalyzed my passion to want to bring awareness to the not only just the battles and struggles of living with a chronic disease and how that can affect our mental health, uh, you know our familial relationships and the success that we can find through our work, and the fact that we have to take so much time taking care of our bodies that all of those things can kind of fall by the wayside, and the effects that that can have. So not only did I want to share about that aspect, but as I started to create some of these blogs and messaging and share, on the CF Foundation's blog platform and my own platform, and then in the culmination of getting this experimental treatment and realizing the value that my own voice had in not only obtaining the treatment, but in the effect of the treatment, and how important it is for these new and novel therapeutics to come about to help patients and treat patients that are battling these very devastating infections, and the gaps that exist in not that there isn't enough of an availability of these new types of treatments or effective therapeutic options. And so I wanted to, not only twofold, not only empower other patients in their own disease journeys and be more voices for themselves, and to try, if there are avenues of treatments options where they can pursue, it's to leverage these and to push for this type of care, but also to broadly bring awareness to industry, to different stakeholders in the problems and the devastation that exists for people that are battling these chronic infections, and the need that very much still exists for new types of therapies outside of traditional antibiotics. So this combined is what led me to wanting to be this voice. So through writing articles and in news sites, then in starting to be interviewed on different for like a documentary, as I mentioned in this past segment, and a couple of other written forms and video formats. I broadened, increasingly sharing this type of messaging, and some of that led to my involvement even in the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation's infection research committee, where I was started to be this patient voice who was communicating with researchers, with CF Foundation staff, with hospitals, with doctors. So I was leveraging my patient experience in a more professional sense. And
Gotcha.
so, like through this, as one example, through the Infection Research Steering Committee, I was giving perspective on where there still exists gaps in patients, who, there's a number of patients that, despite, being helped by Trikafta and improving quality of life, the need for new therapies for infections remains a huge need.
We
And
agree. Yeah, we agree wholeheartedly. And since your experimental treatment with the phage therapy, the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation has invested in phage therapy, but it's still not on the market yet, correct?
Yeah, exactly. So there are, a number of clinical trials in investigating phage as a viable treatment option in the future, but yeah, nothing approved as of yet.
Gotcha. So you've interacted with the foundation on patient panels, and you definitely told them the biggest need is new anti-infective therapies, and that's exactly what we're trying to develop at Vast Therapeutics, both for patients with CF and those with bronchiectasis not related to CF and other respiratory diseases. How specifically, you've gotten that message across, and there's channels to do it with the foundation through your own work. Uh, can you talk about how that message has been received by other corporations and other bigger companies, like the developers of the therapies that are already on the market?
And you mean specifically for infections?
Or just the need, just your voice, or how you've interacted with companies. I mean, it's very important
Yeah.
to put the patient at the center of drug development, and how have they been receptive to your story, and how have you seen major corporations that we see traded on the Nasdaq, for example, receive your story and implement it in their business?
Yeah, I mean, as I started to broaden, my exposure and share my story more at large at, even at healthcare conferences and getting invited to speak to companies, sharing my story, not just companies that are developing new treatments in CF, but more broadly in the clinical research, clinical trial industry. I've been it's fortunate that I think companies as a whole, industry as a whole, is understanding that this perspective and this voice from patients and this lived experience really helps to shape and create better solutions and better products and better treatments, because we can help to give perspective into, for example, how the design of a clinical trial can support patients better and make it more
Yeah.
reasonable for them to participate, and then that can help to accelerate a treatment moving through its drug phases. And
Right.
so I think that's just one example, but I think as a whole industry is understanding that our voices are really impactful and important, and our true partnerships are really meaningful.
Right. At the end of the day, industries like companies like us have to understand it's your life. It's your life we're trying to transform with the therapy. And so when we design a clinical trial, it's important to take your life into consideration, and all those little things that we don't spend time in the conference room sitting around thinking about, but all the intricacies of what your daily life, like how many times a day, or how long you'd have to nebulize, how difficult it is to clean, does it have a taste, things like that. That's a lot of perspective we've gotten from the patients that we've interacted with, and we look forward to interacting with you both on your journey going forward, as well as Vast. We sort of have the same mission to spread the need for innovation in specifically in CF, but also broader and other rare respiratory lung diseases, and it's really the focus of our Rare and Real interview series. um, so you highlighted where you think the gaps in innovation still exist. If you and listening to all the other patients, if they could have just one new treatment, and what would it be, and what would it do, and why?
Oh gosh.
Like a magic bullet. But you know enough about the mechanisms and the science to say, a single drug can't hit everything. But in
Right.
CF, with the current care, what would you say is the greatest need? And if you had a magic bullet, I could do, I could accomplish this. It would be life changing for patients.
Well, other than obviously treating the infections, which remain a large problem, there also is, and with the advent of modulator therapies that are stabilizing lung health and sort of reducing the trajectory of disease, there also exists a need for those that are, adults with CF who have underlying lung damage, considerable lung damage, as
Scarring,
everything
yeah.
self-scarring, yeah, is the need for rejuvenating the dead tissue in the lungs. And
Uh-huh.
that would be through stem cell therapy potentially. That's where I could see really a significant shift and improvement in broad quality of life, to where then infections wouldn't, it could be almost like restarting the lung from new, where modulator therapies can then continue to, reduce the significant damage of the lungs. And then any new types of infective therapeutics can also reduce that progression. So
Yeah.
that's the problem with, lungs that are already sustained a lot of damage is these types of therapies help, but in very moderate ways.
Gotcha. Yeah. So first, stop the infection and the lung decline.
Mhm.
Make that not a problem,
Right.
and then be able to remodel the scarring that's there. Regenerative medicine has made some significant strides in other therapeutic areas, and there's a significant interest in rejuvenating our skin, rejuvenating wounds, and we've started in the medical field has started with areas that are addressable topically, but how do we bring that innovation also to the lung and sort of think about it as a living tissue, not just a static organ, and how do we rejuvenate that as well?
Yeah, it's big picture thinking, but
Yeah, no, I like it.
forward
It's
thinking.
maybe after we're successful with ALX1, we'll branch out into regenerative medicine, and I think nitric oxide has that potential beyond just being an antimicrobial. You look at its roles in facilitating wound healing, for example, where it remodels the tissue, decreases scarring. And so there's a lot about the role of nitric oxide in your body and how it can actually impact normal lung function. And maybe it has some regenerative medicine properties there as well. Um, do you have any final advice for patients who want to use their voice like yours and sort of get into the speaking circuit? Anybody who has a similar story, maybe it's in a different respiratory disease, maybe it's with NTM, maybe it's with primary ciliary dyskinesia. What would you encourage them to do as first steps?
I would encourage everyone to take stock in the knowledge that they have about their disease, about their care, about what they know works, treatments for them, what they feel they need out of improving their quality of life, and to then effectively and confidently relay that to not just their doctors within their care setting, but then to share this beyond, to share it with others in their community, to sort of build that relationship and build that, you know, build that, yeah, build that community presence. And then together, there can be more culminated voices. And I think that that's really what inspires change on behalf of industry, or, in any other space, is just more voices coming together for a mutual cause and a purpose. And if we are able to, not only feel confident and to know that we want to make a difference in our own lives and on behalf of our communities, that's how change and advocacy really begins. And and ultimately to believe and to know that humanity we want better. We want to improve the health and lives of everybody. And so that is ultimately the mission. And we as individuals play a small role in that. And we can do that, and we can continue to push for that.
Wow. It takes, a village to create an innovative therapy. And Ella's advice is to put stock in your own personal experience, and hold that, at its core and use it as a part of fueling, solutions that we need. I really appreciate that feedback. I look forward to our team watching this video. I'm certainly energized to get back in the lab this afternoon, with our experimental therapeutic. Um, Ella, thank you sincerely for being here on the Rare and Real interview series. Are you going to be at the North American CF conference in October?
Thanks, Nate. I am not sure yet. Time is coming up quickly. I know it's already August, and I
Gotcha.
have a conference in Dublin later that week, so I'm still
Oh
deciding.
wow, busy woman.
Yeah.
Um, Well, we're going to be there. If you do decide to go to Seattle, I will see you there. VAST will be presenting some of the exciting preclinical work against Pseudomonas aeruginosa. Our founder, Dr. Mark Shanefish, will be presenting that. That work was actually funded academically through the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. So Mark and Dr. Susan Burkett also appreciate that support. So anyway, Ella, it's great to have you today again, and I look forward to seeing you at the conferences in the future. And for everyone watching, thank you for tuning into our interview series on Rare and Real. If you're not already following Vast Therapeutics, you can follow us on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn to stay in touch with our emerging corporate news and future interviews on this interview series. Thank you, everyone, for listening and hearing Ella's amazing story.
Thank you.